Hi everyone, good morning. I guess the live streaming on YouTube has started. So for the people who have dialed in, welcome all, and good morning to those who are viewing us from UK. Good afternoon for everyone who has dialed in from APAC, and of course, good morning from everyone dialed in from Europe as well. Uh, Today's webinar is on leveraging Google Cloud in a multi-cloud universe. And for next hour or so, uh, my co-hosts and I will be walking you through various dimensions and aspects of how do you go about setting that up, what are some of those decision levers, and how do you fit in Google Cloud in the context that we see, and why we believe Google Cloud is one of the choice that you should have, and for the reasons that we would have, right? We will conclude the session with a demo from Google Cloud on the Anthos platform. And at the end, we will take questions. I have a note written over here, so I'm going to read from the note so that I don't miss out on any information. If you have any questions, you would like to ask us, please go to Slido using the code 39323, which is visible on the screen right now. And we will try to take as many questions as we can. And if we are not able to address any questions, we will definitely make an outreach and ensure that we answer your questions. Now, without further delay, I'll do a quick introduction on my end, and then I will hand it over to my co-hosts to introduce themselves. Uh, I'm presently pursuing my hobby at Synechron, building trading systems. I have been associated with digital transformation and change programs for a little over 18 years now. I've led modernization and cloud engineering engagements for tier one clients, and absolutely passionate what I do at Synechron. So that's me, Anand Chandra, based out of London, heading the technology for Synechron UK, Europe, and APAC. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is YeongEun. I'm the partner engineer from Google Cloud. And today in this session, I'm going to introduce what solutions we have from Google Cloud around financial services. And also, we'll have a quick Anthos demo at the end.
Thank you. Yeah. Eklove.
Hi, so my name is Eklove. I'm based out in US, in Virginia, where coincidentally we have a lot of data centers for AWS, Azure, and GCP as well. So I'm pretty close to that. But with Synechron, I've been with over 8 years. I've been working on cloud for over 7 years now. Recently shifted to multi-cloud. I've been working on that. Pretty excited to talk about that experience during this session itself.
Thank you, Eklove. Thank you. Yeah. I won't steal much thunder from these guys. I'll just set the stage. I'll set the tone, and with that context, when you look at multi-cloud implementations, there are dimensions to it. Uh, One of the key dimensions is adoption at scale, and to what degree you are able to meet that scale. Certain organizations are transforming culturally. Certain organizations are reinventing their standardization at an enterprise level, and that is one of the key driving factors. One of the other dimensions is the business process transformation itself. Uh, when you speak to a financial services client, they don't want to literally create their organization on a cloud. They want to leverage the cloud. That's tech for business. They want to definitely look at the finer aspect of data as an asset, lineage, distribution, storage. Those are some of the key aspects when you look at it from a jurisdiction perspective. And that is where multi-cloud gets more interesting as you move it along, right? The third dimension, which is where many times some of the programs that I would be part of come in, is on the containerization, which is tech for tech. And tech for tech is largely driven based on how does an organization moves from a part of a journey to everything as a code. And Eklove in his examples, Eklove in his experiences would bring that out, and I and he will support. But it is one of the aspects that you will hear it him speak on that. Now, with that said, in terms of the dimensions of the cloud, how do you look at the decision trends? Does one size fits all? Do you just look at the service catalog that you have when you are plotting your multi-cloud journey? Is jurisdiction, cloud wastage are some of the aspects that you look at? Or you also consider some of the elements where the application roots have come from? So this is a snapshot view of one of the tier one clients. And the quantification of an application when they are making their multi-cloud journey is based on heritage modernization, evolutionary modernization, and regulatory change. With all due respect to heritage, it is something that you're going to carry forward with your ecosystem as you build out. Clearly, you can see it. If your application landscape is greenfield, it is something new, it is on a re-architecture path, the bars are set very high. The yardsticks for your current maturity versus your target maturity requires a very high degree of pace, discipline. It requires a high-end approach towards commonality, standardization. And I think those are some of the key factors when you look at, we have been part of conversations and discussions on retrospection, look back, reassessment, revalidation on why post cloud journey on a multi cloud setup we still not able to leverage the benefits of it, the gains, the cost efficiency. So these are some of the key factors that we have seen. We won't get into much details in my part of the section. You will definitely have it as it comes along, but more than happy to give you any perspective on how these three application routes or program routes can also drive your journey of your multi-cloud, right? How are firms looking at it? Platform thinking is a new way of looking at ecosystem. It is a model where the consumers are co-creating, and that is where there is a lot of simplification, everything as code, developer experience, and innovation as a service as a byproduct are coming in. And platformization is one of the key aspects that are driving or enabling the journey of multi-cloud. At Synechron, how do we look at it in terms of partnering with our clients? At our FinLabs, we provide that mechanics, we provide that acceleration point in terms of our 100 plus code base across our 8 accelerator programs. Our most recent one, Investec, very focused on buy side, uh, was solely built on the fact of how does multi-cloud sets up in a broader, large wealth, asset, and incremental private banking space, right? Including the boutique buy-side firms. Through our accelerators, our clients can reap the benefits of the research and the R&D that our team does. Our accelerator are not necessarily something that you would install. They are much richer than that. It allows you to have components. It allows you to have modules, which allows the firms to play around and take the advantage of plotting their journey on multi-cloud. So in a broader context, to set the stage for a multi-cloud journey in the event of how do you translate your vision, your decision trends, how do you package it using platformization is one approach that we are seeing. And how do you take innovation as one of the key aspects or emerging tech and plot that journey. So with that said, I will now pass it on to Eklove, who will walk us through the journey, give us some examples of how we have partnered and what experience we have had, and take a deep dive on why we believe Google Cloud is the right choice of platform. So with that said, Eklove.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So you can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Anand. First of all, if anyone has joined late, we still have that slide open. Any questions that you would have, please feel free to go in there and use the code 39323 and add your questions. We'll take all the questions by the end of the session itself, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can during the remaining time. Okay, so moving on, continuing to what Anand was talking about, let's first talk about our journey or the customers that we have been working with, what were the issues that they were facing, and what did they find the solutions in multi-cloud. So if I have to pick up top 3 reasons of choosing multi-cloud with our customers, the very first reason was the resistance to outage. Okay, what that means is that when we started working on cloud a couple of years back, at that point of time, cloud was portrayed as something that is going to resolve all your problems that you had with on-premise network. There will be scalability, there will be elasticity, that will all be available for you on demand. Okay, those things were true, but we also realized that there were some petty issues because of which the cloud providers do go down. Just to give you some examples here, um, in March of 2020, there was an outage by one cloud provider for 6 hours because their cooling system didn't work. Okay, it took them 6 hours to fix that. Okay, a very petty issue. Another cloud provider had an identity and access management API which locked the accounts, and then all the other services were disrupted because of that. Another cloud provider in November of 2020 had such a severe outage for 12 hours that even their own systems were not able to work or display the status on that. So that's the kind of magnitude that you see with cloud. So with good comes with some bad as well. The only problem is with this bad, there is the sufferer is the customer. Okay, the net result is downtime. Okay, based on one of the studies that we recently saw, 1 hour of an outage cost a company about $300,000 to $400,000 per hour. Okay, so we are talking about that much of money, but at the same time, there is a bigger loss to a reputation, which cannot be quantified in numbers. But that's the problem that organizations are facing with cloud. So the primary expectation from our customers was, if we go multi-cloud, do we get away from these kind of outages? Will my problem solve? That's what multi-cloud is getting attraction on, but that's what people are looking for in terms of a solution on multi-cloud. See, the outages will always be there. It's part and parcel of the cloud now. Okay, because the examples that I gave were pretty recent. They were from 2020, last year only. And you see that the big three, they did go down at some point of time. So what can be done to nullify that would be that you go on multi-cloud, where you have more than one cloud provider serving your applications itself. Okay, in that particular case, there's still a possibility, but that possibility of everything, all the cloud providers going down at the same time in the same region is very rare. If that happens, then probably that's the end of the world itself, because otherwise it may not happen. Okay, so that's the first reason or first expectation that the customers had. Then the second reason was competitive pricing. So we know that if you have to build a resistant system which can sustain outages, you need to put in more money on that. Okay, but it should not be a factor of two. So for example, I already have a complete setup that is running on cloud. Okay, if I have to invest the same amount again, that's a big investment, right? That factor of two is important. I need to reduce that factor if I have to be successful in multi-cloud. Okay, anyways, with even without going multi-cloud, I can, if I don't have the criteria for that factor of two, I can always host the entire application in a different region altogether. I can do the switchover. That's how things have been working prior to multi-cloud, right? But that's not the goal. The goal is that I want to operate from the same region with the same latency, the same set of users that are connecting to my system. They should not see any impact of that. So that's what competitive pricing is all about. So with multi-cloud, we are able to see that benefit coming in. Okay, and I'll dig into this a little more deeper in some of the upcoming slides, but yes, multi-cloud gives you that benefit as well. And the third and the most important one is the regulatory compliance. So resistance to outage, competitive price, these all become secondary. Okay, if the regulatory compliance is not met, you don't go with one or two. Okay, and the problem is that the regulatory compliance is not something that you can easily overcome because it changes from one region to another, right? So uh, if you look from the pricing perspective, what you would see is that Virginia region in US is by far the cheapest of all the other regions across the world that you would see. So if I have a business that's running in Singapore, I would not be able to run all my instances on in Virginia because of the regulatory compliance itself, because Singapore may not allow you to store your data in that particular region or in US itself. Okay, there are other kind of limitations as well. Each region has their own set of limitations, and it is important for us to understand all those aspects itself. So let me just cover the multi-jurisdiction factors itself to give you a complete picture. Okay, so from the perspective of the multi-jurisdiction factors, there are three important factors that we need to consider: the data ownership and management. So ideally, you assume that it's your data that is being created, you own it, but it's not that way on cloud. Okay, and the reason why I say that is because in 2018, there was a law that was passed by the Trump administration, which said that if you are a US cloud provider or cloud service provider, you can be ordered to provide local authorities the data that you have stored, no matter which region that belongs to. You need to provide access to that data. Now, this definitely created a lot of chaos across the world, and Europe has now started working on a plan, especially France and Germany. They collaborated and they have come up with an initiative called as Gaia X, which is responsible for just this kind of a reliance where you have so much of dependency on US and Asia based cloud providers that there is nothing as such that Europe can hold responsible for, right? So what this initiative is trying to do is that it's trying to create a collaboration or an interoperable data exchange between the businesses in Europe, okay, which will follow the European laws itself, the GDPRs that are already been set by the European companies itself. The participants will choose what data can be shared, what it can be used for, and what data cannot be shared with other participants itself. So if you are in Europe, keep an eye on that development, because that would govern how you choose your multi-cloud partner itself. The second factor is the operational requirement. This is again very important because there are some regions in the world which put a bias on which cloud provider you can go with. Okay, so again, as an example, if you look at China, probably that's the only country in the world that does not allow any foreign cloud service providers to set up their own data centers. And that's the reason you would see a different cloud providers which are getting prominence in that region itself. So Alibaba, China Telecom, those are the ones that are at peak as compared to AWS, Azure, GCP that you would see across the globe in other regions itself. So operational requirements does control all these aspects itself. The third reason is the regional presence. Which cloud providers are available in your region? In that particular case, you have to pick a choice between that. So it's not more of a regulatory needs, but it's more from the presence perspective, what you have in that particular region itself. Okay, so just to give you another examples on that, I have taken 3 different continents and will explain you what that means. Okay, so for example, let's take Europe first. The map is not at scale, so don't try to exactly pinpoint that this particular place is right there. But what I'm trying to depict here is that Netherlands, for example, as of today, has Azure and GCP as the cloud providers that are already there, along with the local players. But I'm talking more in terms of the global players that are there. Okay, so if you have a choice or your organization at a global level is using AWS, it may be a little difficult for you to run that in Netherlands. You would definitely be able to have AWS instances running, but then you can't choose Netherlands as the region because they don't have it there. The presence is not there. Okay, but Azure and GCP are there. So if you are on Azure or GCP, you always have a choice to pick the other one. Similarly, if you go to Ireland, Ireland has presence for AWS and Azure. Okay, Switzerland has Azure, GCP, and AWS is now coming up with their own data center there. So increasing the presence there. Finland currently only has GCP. There's no other cloud provider. Again, from the global perspective, there are local providers that are there. Norway is again only Azure. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the availability of a specific cloud provider in your region would always take priority over the global presence that your organization may be following. Okay. Just to complete the story, if I get into the Middle East region, you would see that in UAE, it's only Azure. Qatar is GCP and Azure. Both of them are trying to set up their data center there. Bahrain currently has only AWS. Coming to Asia, Taiwan has GCP, Azure coming up. Southeast Asia, if you go to Jakarta, GCP, Alibaba already there, and AWS is coming up. China obviously has Alibaba, the biggest presence there, along with Azure and AWS. And Singapore has good choice in terms of all the 4 cloud providers being available there. Coming to Australia, New Zealand is getting its first of these major cloud providers. Azure is setting up their data center there. And in Australia, already all the 4 data providers are there. So the whole idea here was to give you a quick snapshot of the regional presence of all these cloud providers, because those judgment would be required when you are making a choice between your multi-cloud providers itself. Hope that gives you a perspective of how to choose your multi-cloud providers itself. I will now move on and talk about some of the very distinct case studies that we have worked on, our live experience about implementing these kind of solutions across the globe and getting into a multi-cloud solutions itself. Now, at the outset, let me mention that these case studies that we are talking about, they're very different. And again, if you're coming from a very bookish kind of a knowledge, or you're only talking about multi-cloud, you may find things very different in these 2 case studies that we would be talking about, because you're coming from a background where people more talk about cloud agnostic or avoiding vendor lock-in, those kind of scenarios in a multi-cloud. We tend to differ, and we have one of our case studies where I would talk about more of native services, but still a multi-cloud solution. And that's my first case study. So we built a web crawler for one of our customers who was looking for an end-to-end solution where they wanted to build an application that would be able to crawl the entire World Wide Web. There were 800 different websites which were their partners. They wanted to crawl those websites, download 8 different types of document that included the annual report, that included the press releases, all these kind of documents which were mostly in PDF. Download those documents if they are fresh. If they have already been downloaded, then we don't download them again. Once the documents were downloaded, they were stored into an Elasticsearch system itself. They were indexed. The metadata was also stored along with all these documents. After that, there was a third process, which was the data extraction. From these PDF documents, we extracted all the information that was required, performed some analytics, and then present that results on to our data scientists who were using that information itself. Okay, this solution was initially set up as a hybrid implementation. We used AWS as a public cloud provider, and the analytics portion of that was all running on premise. Okay, but when we were running this solution about 6 months into that solution, we started getting the typical on-premise challenges, running out of space. There were too many documents there. The processing capacity wasn't that great. So at that point of time, we decided on moving that on-premise piece onto public cloud. And for us, because it was more analytical kind of a workload, we are now moving that to GCP. There was a lot of deep dive that we did because we were already using AWS. Um, the analytical capabilities are also available on AWS, but there were some comparisons that we did, and we found GCP to be more suitable to our needs, and that is why we opted for that. So as of now, we are moving most of our workloads, or all our workload that was running from on-premise onto the GCP platform itself. Let me show you how we are doing it. So as a web crawler, these are the three components that are there with this system. So there is a document acquisition. That's the first stage where we configure our crawler to crawl these 8,000 websites. We set the frequency, we set the schedule of that. And then all these spiders are the services that are running on these crawlers at the predefined interval itself. All this system is currently, as I said, running on AWS. It's a container-based system. The backend is all on MySQL, running on Amazon RDS. So that's how the system has been developed. The document store, that consists of all the documents that we are storing into the system. That's was on-premise. This is now moved on to GCP, and same is the case with the analytical services as well. Anything of abstraction and pulling out that information, the big data capabilities, all that, now we are utilizing GCP for those kind of capabilities itself. At the moment, we have started seeing the benefits of moving this workload on cloud. So the performance benefit, cost benefits, all those things are pretty evident at this point of time. So we are pretty sure that the decision that we made of moving to GCP is working in our favor. Okay, and that's why we wanted to present you this particular case study. If you need more information on how we implemented that or any other questions that you have, please feel free to reach out to us. We will be more than happy to share this information of how we implemented that with you either today, or even if you send us mail offline after that, we would be able to give you more details. Okay, so that was the first case study. As I said, the whole intent here was that we used cloud native services, but still called it a multi-cloud because there is a portion of AWS which is running an independent piece, and there is a piece on GCP which is running a very analytical kind of a workspace. So, and that's the whole point with multi-cloud implementation, right? You can pick what is best with these cloud providers and stitch a solution around that, right, to give you best of all the worlds. And that is why we call multi-cloud a much more better way of building solutions as compared to just being on public cloud itself. With that, let me move on to the second case study. This is again a very interesting one. It's about MongoDB on cloud. Again, MongoDB on cloud is not a very big deal to start off with, because every cloud provider has that. Okay, you go on AWS, you go on GCP or Azure, you would see MongoDB there, right? And with MongoDB Atlas, it comes as a multi-cloud solution. Still, we wanted to present you this case study because there was a specific need which those solutions were not able to. In fact, none of the commercial solutions as of now is able to give you that kind of a statement what we are trying to make here. Okay, so this was one of the works that we did for our customer, which is a bank, and they had all this system running on premise for a very long time, and they wanted again, the problems of typical on-premises where the scalability, elasticity were all creating problems, and we wanted to resolve that problem. The only problem is that we can't just move this system on cloud because, again, of the regulatory needs of the bank, it cannot move the sensitive data on cloud. Okay, so what we wanted to do was bifurcate that information, still move on cloud to get the benefits of scalability and elasticity, but at the same time preserve our data of the sensitive information. So we created again a hybrid solution. All the sensitive information remains on-premise in the shards of MongoDB within on-premise, but all the non-sensitive information moves on the public cloud. Okay, and in this particular case, the public cloud is GCP. Okay, so again, let me show you how we did that. So this is how we implemented it. As I said, the on-premise shards that we have, this contains all the sensitive information. This information will never go on public cloud. Okay, the public cloud, what you see on the right, is the shards that you have. This is all created on the virtual machines, the compute engines of GCP. It contains all non-sensitive information. There is, besides this also, there is a lot of security that has been put in. Like for example, on the top, you see something called as a certified image. So the customer was very particular in terms of even the non-sensitive data itself. We were not just using any Linux platform itself or the base images that were provided by GCP. What we had done was that these base images were first certified by the customer security team itself, the bank security teams. They ensured that their security needs are being met. So just to give you some examples, they wanted that the SSH port should be disabled on these virtual machines. Okay, there should be a only limited set of users, groups, permissions that should be managed within this image itself. Once that was certified, only a pre-approved version of MongoDB should be installed on these instances. Okay, once that was done, those were snapshot, a golden image was created, and with that golden image, we were able to run these VMs. At this point of time, this is all running as a system which we call it as everything as a code. I mean, nothing is very specific to GCP. Okay, as of now, if we want to split it out between GCP, AWS, or Azure, we would be easily able to do that. If we want to bring the entire system back to on-premise, we would be able to do that without any changes. So all these kind of things were some challenges that we were facing, and that is how we have implemented that. The ops manager was the crux here, which was responsible for registering all the nodes and replacements in case of rolling updates as well. So all those things were managed by the ops manager itself. So these were the two very distinct case studies. As I said earlier, if you have any more questions on that, we will be happy to answer or take that up. Okay, either right now or even at a later point of time. So coming to my last section, which is about why did we choose GCP? Okay, so again, from the perspective of Synechron, we have partnership with AWS. We are advanced partner with AWS. We are gold partners with Microsoft. We are technology partner with Pivotal Cloud Foundry as well. But we see some very unique benefits with GCP, and that's what we will talk about in the next slide itself. But before I go there, I just wanted to show you one interesting piece of information that was published with Gartner study as well. So again, there's no doubt that AWS is the pioneer because they started pretty much early in the game itself. So they are the global leaders. Most of the organizations which started the cloud journey pretty early, they are already on AWS. But GCP is being seen as the strategic alternative to AWS. And in some cases where you see that there is a conflicting business between Amazon and the customer itself, in that particular case, GCP is being adopted as the strategic partner itself. So that's what the industry study says, Gartner analysis said. Coming to our reasons why we think GCP is more suited or more systematic and pragmatic than the other cloud providers that we are working with. So these are the 5 benefits, again, not in any particular order. Um, Live migration was something that we thought is the best one, the best feature that we have seen. It's like doing the heart transplant without giving a local anesthesia, or I mean anesthesia, not even local, I mean talking about anesthesia itself. Okay, like if there is a hardware update or a software update, live migration, there is no impact on that. I mean, it just migrates your VM to another one, and it's transparent to the end user. There is no downtime at all. Okay, so that's the beauty of live migrations, which we see there. Again, resizing of the disk was another feature that we saw, that without rebooting the system itself or taking the snapshot, we were able to resize the disks itself. Okay, in terms of cloud network tiers, there are 2 different tiers that GCP provides: the standard and the premium. Okay, standard is something that every cloud provider has. Premium is the one that actually fascinated us a lot because it gave us more reliability and the performance itself. It works on the optical fiber that is a private network of Google itself, so the traffic goes in there. Okay, pricing, again, very competitive in terms of Google Cloud itself. If you compare it with the other regions, um, you can do the study yourself itself. GCP comes out to be the lowest in terms of virtual machine pricing itself. Backups, containers, Kubernetes is the backbone of or the brainchild of Google Cloud itself. So that's what is a big plus for us. Anything that gets added to Kubernetes gets first on GCP, and the others have to do the catch up on that. So those are some of the reasons why we think the GCP suits us best for our business needs itself. I'll now pass it over to Ye to take it over and talk about some of the adoptions that she sees in the financial services, followed by a very interesting demo on Anthos. Ye, over to you.
Yep, thank you. Let me share my screen. Yep, hope you can see my screen. So hi again, everyone. I'm from Google Cloud Partner Team, and I'd like to share what Google Cloud is providing as a solution for financial services. And as shared earlier, if you have any question, please share it on the Slido so we can address them later. So to begin with, there are 5 key trends in financial services as we observe. First one being having the lowest interest rate in the history, which is impacting the economic uncertainty. And also customer expectation is changing from face-to-face interaction to more digital interactions. And also intensified regulatory requirement is increasing the compliance cost up to 50 billion per year. And now we're observing 4 more times cyber attacks, which is increasing the privacy and security requirements. And lastly, we are also seeing a lot of industry disruptor. So many customers are willing to invest in fintech than ever before. So to keep up with these trends, Google Cloud is providing uniquely positioning our help for your organization to innovate. I'm going to introduce 3 pillars today. First one is to reimagine customer relationship using digital solutions. So we actually have a lot of AI ML capabilities, which I will share shortly. And also we help you to transform and modernize the use of data. And achieving those 2, we are also helping you to improve the operational efficiencies. So let me go through them one by one. First, to reimagine the customer relationship, we are seeing a lot of challenges as well. The first one being having overwhelmed call centers, which is requiring a lot of efforts on the customer interactions. And those things can be overcome by Google Contact Center AI, for example, by having virtual agents than having more human agents that will cost a lot. And also we see a lot of customers are talking about the open banking, and Google Cloud is providing API integration tools such as RPG. And this will ease the integration cost and also reduce the time and effort that's required. And also, we see that there are a lot of documents in financial services specifically. So we are providing lending document AI, for example. So in this many documents, we help you to convert this unstructured data, which is seen in the document, and you can just take the picture. And we are converting this data into more readable and actionable data set that you can leverage directly from. And lastly, we also provide Google Workspace. It's not only for your customers and also but also for within your own organization to collaborate better to have more productivity. And moving to the second part, we see some surveys that actually financial service industry is using less than 1% of the whole data they are actually having already. The challenges for that can be because of the need for running models in the larger data set even faster. And also we need more complex risk calculation to keep up with the market movement. And also we need to streamline and automate all this process at the same time. So Google Cloud is providing the high performance computing for quantitative analysis or risk simulation, but to help you to capture, clean, cache, and call your data even faster. And lastly, achieving those two, we also want to improve the operational efficiency, especially in the multi-cloud environment. We see it's very complex to manage multi-cloud environment because different vendors have different management set, and also it's hard to move around the workload. So Google Cloud is providing solutions like Anthos, for example, which help you to modernize your infrastructure and also your application, no matter where you're running them. So at the end, I will also introduce a quick demo of Anthos. And on top of that, Google is providing the best-in-class security with the world's one of the biggest private network in the world. So for example, your data in Singapore can traverse to your data in London, for example, within Google's private network, which means that it can go through the private IP. So this one will not only lower the latency, but also increase the security and help you to redesign your DR or data migration. So on top of that, Google is also having all this compliance met already, and this is proven by all our customers, not only in fintech, but also in multinational banks and insurance companies. And on top of that, we are also expanding our broader coverage by building a strong partner ecosystem with a lot of vendors. So with that, I will pass it to you. Yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Eklove.
You're gonna do the demo?
Oh, okay. I thought I'm having. Yeah, I'll start the demo. Sorry about that. I was a bit confused about the sequence. So before I go into the demo, let me briefly talk about what components we have in in Anthos. So let me present it again. So as I mentioned before, there are a lot of challenges managing multi-cloud environment, and Anthos is a solution to help you to modernize the infrastructure and application itself. So no matter what you're running, whether it's VMware workload or the container workload, and also no matter where you are running that, it can be on GCP and it can be on your on-prem data center, or it can be also in other cloud vendor as well. So Anthos is the single tool to manage the whole infrastructure. To do that, actually, there are a few components in the Anthos. First one is the container management. So we have visibility of all your container clusters, not only in GCP environment and also in other environment as well. And on top of that, previously in the simple 3-tier application, it was easy to configure the policies for network, but now in the microservice environment, it's a lot difficult to manage all these service meshes. So we have the second components to manage all this networking policy of different services. And on top of that, we of course have the policy management tool. So once you enforce the policy in Anthos, it can be pushed to GCP, on-prem, and other cloud vendors at the same time. And on top of that, we also have an operation management tool, which is related to the monitoring capability. And we also have the application development components, which will help you to integrate the DevOps or CI/CD environment. So due to the time constraint, I will only have the visibility, the demo of container management and service management today. But if you have any question on other components, we are happy to answer it later. So this is the demo I'm gonna show today, but because of the time limits, I will also shorten it a bit. So we have Anthos simple cluster on the left side. So this blue, sorry. So this blue part here is gonna be sitting on the Google Cloud. And on the right side, we also have one more cluster, which is actually running on your on-prem data center. So this is the remote cluster. So let me. So let me start with that. So this is the Google Cloud Platform. I hope all of you are already very familiar with that. If not, I'm ready to let you go through that. So we have the clusters. And here, see, we have Anthos sample cluster and remote cluster as well. Actually, in the demo environment, we have both of them sitting on GCP. But in the multi-cloud environment, you can also onboard your own cluster here. So if you see this one, if you onboard these two clusters together, then as you can see here, on the bottom, we will have central one cluster sitting on the GCP cloud. So the location is our GCP Central 1B zone. And if we onboarded a remote controller from on-prem environment, we will have it as a registered. So as you can see here from this Anthos dashboard, you can see both GCP cluster and also your on-prem cluster together. And unfortunately, we cannot show the whole onboarding process of the remote cluster. So I will just show to the screenshot here. And once you have all these other clusters onboarding, you will have all the clusters showing up here on GCP and also on your on-prem data center. And that we will have the whole same experience, even though you're onboarding other cluster in other cloud provider as well. So once it's all onboarded, no matter where they're sitting, you can still see all the workloads at the same time. And you can also see services and ingresses. So in this demo, we are having this simple application of Anthos Bank. So this is a demo application we are running. So we have the Bank of Anthos service running. So once I sign in, you will see we are running all these components on the individual services. So all the services we are running here is actually sitting here. So we can actually see one of the individual services status. And as you can see here, we have namespace on this column. So if you want to filter specific namespace only, we can also do that. So this is the Bank of Anthos namespace. And yeah, we can only see this related workload in this namespace. So here you can see services and ingresses. And services are the set of paths that we are exposing to outside. And ingress is the opposite. It's the collection of the rules for the routing external traffic into our service that we are running here. So this is actually in the Kubernetes engine. And moving to the Anthos, the first thing we have to do is onboarding these clusters. So we saw in the Kubernetes engine, we are actually having two clusters sitting, but now we have only one cluster registered here. So if you want to onboard any new cluster only on GCP or in your on-prem environment, you can come here to register existing cluster. Then it will show all the registered cluster here. Then you can click register to onboard them on Anthos. And once this is onboarded, it's gonna show up here. And likewise, you will get to see all the services that are actually running on all the clusters, not only on GCP, but also in your other environments like on-premises. So this is all the services that's running to run this Bank of Anthos application. So this is a table view, but you can also see the topology view here. So you can actually see how all the services are connected. So we have different services talking to each other, And you can also go back to specific time to see what's actually happening, how the communication was actually happening back that time. So we can see we have front end and we have different components and services running on top. And you can actually expand that to see our Istio component. So if you observe each of the workload, you will actually see there are two things running for one. So we have the actual workload. This is running as Istio workload. But on top of that, we have one more component for Istio services. So this is what Service Mesh is doing. So previously in three-tier simple application, all these network policies were actually sitting in the application itself. So you had to hard code all the network components and policies in the code itself. But as you're moving to the microservice environment in the containers, now we are only having this elements in the application itself, but we are abstracting all these network kind of policies in the Istio service here. So if, for example, if you want to have mature TLS configured, or if you want to load balance, or if you want to block some, if you want to enable or block the traffic between two different services, all this configuration will be sitting in the service. So this will intercept the traffic to apply the policies. So this is what we can see, and this will have a lot of benefit if you have more complex microservices talking to each other, not only in GCP and in the multi-cloud environment. To apply the policies here, you can come to configuration management to make sure that all your policies that you pushed are being enforced over the workload. So here we can see that our policy is well synced with what you're actually running in your environment. So this is where you can the single point where you can come and push the policy in GCP cluster and other clusters as well. In cluster, we also saw we saw this already. And one last feature I want to introduce is the migrate to containers. So if you're not really familiar with the container environment, this is a new feature that can actually help you to migrate the virtual machine into containers. So in this feature, we will abstract the element from the VM layer, and you will have them in the container layer and help you to migrate. Okay, with that, I will conclude the demo and I will pass it back for the questions.
Thank you, Hehe, for the demo. And, it's good to see the importance and the positioning that Google Cloud has created in the financial services section. You also touched upon the way the AI models and the way the service catalog is now being able to view, and it is maturing as it moves along, right? Let me, conclude by saying, at least from the group, the call, in terms of in a multi-cloud setup, you definitely have a lot of aspect that sets in across the services, jurisdiction. Eklove touched upon the regulatory side of the element as well. I, in the beginning, touched upon the application origination, to what degree it comes in. Good to see Google as a platform provides that, and we are working with Google closely on a couple of those engagements. So that's fantastic. I guess also, as Christmas comes early for the audience on the call, Google is giving free credits on the Anthos environment, I guess. So if anybody's interested, please send us your request on the Slido. We are more than happy to get that across. Those credits are being issued by Google, and we will pass it along to you in case you have interest in playing around with the environment and looking at the multi-cloud hooks at your end. So we are more than happy to pass it along. And there are a few questions on the Slido. We probably may not have time for all. I'll take the first one. It's for Eklove. And it says, in first case study, if the service provider is down, the crawler is down despite the multi-cloud strategy, isn't it? Eklove?
Yeah. So if you look at the business scenario, the reason why we built the crawler like this was to make it successful. Okay. When you're saying that the CSP is down, The web crawler is not running for 24 hours. Okay, it's a scheduled job that runs periodically throughout the day. Even if it is not able to download anything, or let's say my AWS service provider is down, it's not going to impact it, because the kind of documents that I'm downloading are not updated every day. Okay, that's the first part. Second part of it, if GCP is down, okay, in that particular case, I already have the data. It's the analytics that has to be performed at that point of time, right? Nothing is real time. The data has already been collected. So this was a very specific use case where going keeping it cloud or locking it with a vendor was not giving us any problems at all. And that's why we went ahead with this. Hope that answers your question.
We will have to check it real time on Slido. So, Eklove, one more question that comes to your side is the outages that you described at the earlier part of the webinar, uh, describing it in 3 or 4 different events. Were they localized or they really had a much more wider global impact?
No, they were not global. They were only confined to US East region. They were only, I haven't seen any global outage with any of the cloud providers, be it AWS, GCP, or Azure, or even Alibaba. Global is, I don't think it will ever be possible to do that.
Fair enough. There is a question for me. It says security is a huge issue, especially with pandemic. What about the security implications of multi-cloud? So I'll take a dab at it. Then Eklove, yeah, please add it. But security in terms of platforms, security in terms of cloud has been at its core, has been discussed upon. Pandemic or no pandemic, of course the new normal makes it even more sensitive because there is a lot of digital ecosystem that gets interfaced and exchanged. I look at it security from a functional viewpoint, and then probably I'll let Eklove comment on the technical side of it. Functionally, the way you looked at the market participants in the trade life cycle or in the financial services gamut, in terms of whichever life cycle you would look at. There are certain participants that were not on the digital ecosystem because they were not required to. But now with post-pandemic, there is a lot of inculcation and embedment of their services onto the platform. Some organizations have had a different pace of journey. Some organizations did not require it because it was much more phone and it was a different mode of communication. But now them coming in with open banking, picking up a much more wider aspect, connectivity of one entity or one stakeholder to the other, the whole marketplace fundamentally shifts the burden not just from one entity but from on both sides. So security is big. The participants have got more exposure functionally, technically, and on a multi-cloud setup is no different. It is fundamentally same. In fact, it's much more in terms of how do you interfaces across the client. So Eklove, any last closing comment on that question?
No, I think you covered it pretty much, every aspect of it. But security on cloud is no different than securing multi-cloud itself. So whatever considerations we generally put in for one cloud provider, that would be applicable. The only thing is it doesn't work across. So for example, I may have identity and access management that I've configured on GCP. That would not work on AWS. So that's the only difference there. But otherwise, encryption, you can use customer managed keys itself. Both of or all the three cloud providers provide you with that. So security wise, yes, everything is what you would do on a single cloud, public cloud.
It's
That would be
same
the
as
same for
multi-cloud.
multi-cloud. Yeah.
I think there are a lot of engagements where there is continuous compliance engines that are being built, which is
Yeah.
part of the application build out itself. There is an aspect of security which is pre-cloud, and then there is an aspect of security which is post-cloud once you deploy.
Yep.
There is a lot of investment that the firms are doing to get that standardize it, templatize it, and that is where everything as code and developer experience is being built upon. And it's that journey that we are looking at. Fantastic. One last question, since it's there in front of me, so I'm just going to pick it up. It's an interesting question. do you ever think Alibaba would be adopted outside of China? So
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Even I don't have a clear answer, but if you look at Southeast Asia or even the Asia market itself, there is a lot of adoption there. Singapore has a good adoption, Hong Kong, China, Japan also has good adoption there. So whether it will be there in US, that's different. I don't think US Alibaba would ever be able to penetrate because all the three cloud providers are from US itself. So that preference will always be there. But yeah, elsewhere, probably.
fantastic, fantastic. No, I think we are on top of the hour. Thank you so much, everyone, for dialing in. Hope the webinar was useful. The idea was to introduce the capability of Google Cloud in the financial services segment. Tell us why we believe and why we have experienced Google Cloud in a way to some of the engagements that we have had. And that was the context of the webinar. And thank you so much and stay safe from our side. So this is a goodbye, a virtual goodbye from Team Synechron and Team Google Cloud. Stay safe.